The White Pill is available now at whitepillbook.com. This episode is brought to you by Patriot Gold. Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us one of our most beloved guests, comic Dave Smith. His new comedy special, Half Hour Dave Smith, is available now for free on YouTube. You could check out the link in the show description notes, wherever you're watching this, following Kurt Metzger's, which you should all watch as well, also for free. Really great stuff. People enjoyed it. Dave is co-host of Part of the Problem, host of Part of the Problem, co-host of Legion of Skanks, which how many years have you been doing that right now?
Oh my God, I think it's depressingly long. I think it's over a decade,
Jesus
I believe,
Christ.
which was never supposed to be.
um,
But it led me to the point where I could put out a comedy special and charge the most I could get away with charging for it. So there you go.
and it's funny because yes, you are Jewish, so I don't know what's going on here.
No, that was me nickel and diming you. I was giving it away.
What I wanted to talk to you about first and foremost is there is news that not everyone might be aware of. There has been a lot of talk for a long time of you seeking the presidential nomination on the Libertarian Party ticket, with me working as your press secretary. Can you officially put a end or a start to these rumors? What's your position?
Oh yeah, well I've announced a bit ago now that it's not going to happen for 2024. And I wish I had a more exciting reason for it, but it's really just like kind of family stuff and wasn't just the timing didn't work out. I was very seriously considering it. It was not just a goof. Like I was really very serious about doing it for a while and actually was planning on it at a certain point in time, but it just kind of it's one of those things where like kind of the stars have to align
Yeah.
with the timing of these things, and it just wasn't the right thing for my family to do right now, but who knows what could happen in the future. But yeah, so I won't be running for president, but I will be continuing to do all of the stuff that I do.
Um, I gave it a lot of thought too. This is something we were actually discussing very, very seriously. I did not think it was at all impossible that we could get you to the debates, because I think if you had all the new media and then all the media hit pieces, which would be also fueled by Republicans as you ate into Trump's lead or Trump's base to some extent, there was a possibility to make the noise. And remember, to get to the debates, you only need like 15%, which is a lot in one sense and not a lot in another sense.
Yeah, I've always been kind of torn on this, like the broader topic, because like you, I'm an anarchist, and you wrote that piece years ago, which I'm blanking on the title for, but it was like the case for not voting
Why I
or
won't
something
vote,
like that.
yes.
Why I won't
And it's
vote.
in the
That was
Anarchist
it.
Handbook. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an excellent piece, and I largely agree with everything you're saying. And I've for a long time been kind of torn on the point of like, first off, I think voting is pointless. The idea that you would take part in something where you have a 1/170 millionth
Right.
influence in it, like assuming they're counting all of the votes accurately,
Right.
it still would just seem ridiculous that you could spend that time making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and handing it to a homeless person and do more good for the world than you would by voting. Almost every area where you live, it's already predetermined. So
Right.
it's just like a real waste of time. But at the same time, I look at the amount of energy that the libertarian movement had when Ron Paul was running for president versus since then. And you go, oh yeah, like if you are trying to spread ideas, which by the very nature of like what me and you are doing right now, we are, that there is something to be said for the fact that Americans pay the most amount of attention once every 4
Yeah.
years, and that there's just a different level of gravitas that's put behind your ideas when it's presidential candidate not just the same exact person, but not running for president. Like Ron Paul was saying a lot of great stuff after he was running for president on the Liberty Report, but it just never kind of had the same amount of weight behind it. And so, yeah, I thought there was something. I wouldn't have ever been considering it if I didn't think like, oh, there is an opportunity where we could do something really special here. So there's been there are some people who are disappointed that we're not going to do it, and then I'm sure some other people that are happy that we're not going to do it. But there was a reason why we were talking about it.
So let's talk about who is there in your stead. So who you know the LP much better than I do. Who is running now for the Libertarian Party nomination?
Well, there's several people. I actually just saw a few of them today because there was an event by me up here in New Jersey that I popped by and spoke for a few minutes. But I'm supporting Michael Rechtenwald,
Okay.
who I think is excellent. I think he's excellent on every issue. If you don't know Michael Rechtenwald, he was a former communist who converted to libertarianism after coming in contact with Rothbard and Hoppe and Mises and stuff like that. He was run off of NYU by like a woke mob because he was, real pushed back hard against all the woke insanity. And he's written like 12 books or something like that, and he's written books about the Great Reset and like tech censorship and things like that. Just super super smart guy who's very good on all of the issues. So that's who I'm supporting this year.
Well, who else is in the mix as far as you know?
Um, Josh Smith is running as well. There's a guy named Mike Termat who is also running. And then there's Chase Oliver, I believe his name is, who is kind of representing the what I would describe as the woke libertarian side of the spectrum, kind of the old guard of the Libertarian Party. Nice enough guy though. I met him and saw him today. He's a nice enough guy, but I don't think he's going to
Well,
win.
let's see. So his name is Chase Oliver. Let's see if he's got me blocked yet. Like I don't know or if I've got him blocked because a lot of those people have preemptively blocked me. And it no
And I'll tell you, they're right. They're right to do it.
no, he has
You are
not
only
blocked
going to
me, nor have I blocked him.
well, he
Um,
should have.
yeah, he
He
should
should
have.
have. You're only going to cause him pain. He should have blocked you. I consider blocking you every day.
Uh, what is a piece of fiction of any medium helped you form your political or philosophical worldview? Right? A lot of people say Rand. Can you guess what his answer is?
What?
Can you guess? You can guess.
A fiction that's helped him oh man, is it going to be like Harry Potter or something
Star
like that?
Trek.
What is it?
Star Trek.
Star Trek. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
And
Why
the
do we
reason
attract
why
so many
do you
furries?
know the reason why? The episode, which I've not seen, I despise Star Trek. It's a perfect piece to demonstrate the importance of respecting liberty in a courtroom. That's a libertarianism,
Mm.
respecting the law in court. It's funny when people accuse libertarians of being Republicans who like smoke pot, and then this
Yeah.
happens.
It is there's something really interesting about it. I had a back and forth with him on Twitter a while back, and it was over so I had taken this position. Sometimes I'll take positions, it's interesting, that are like very controversial within the libertarian party but are totally non-controversial to like everyone outside of it. You know what
Sure,
I mean? And
sure.
like, so there are which I guess is appropriate at times. But so I had said this thing about, because sometimes I think there's something libertarians struggle with a lot, particularly in the current climate. And part of this is because uh, trends have changed a lot in the last few years. So things like crime was getting lower and lower and lower for several decades, and then has spiked up in the last few years. And there's these problems now that libertarians kind of aren't accustomed to dealing with. And so one of the major problems, well, like for example, just to make the point I'm making, that okay, when you have crime spike, in almost every major city across the country. Most people, libertarians, anarchists, our types, have been used to making the arguments for like 40 years that the cops are authoritarian, that the war on drugs is evil, and that too many nonviolent criminals are locked up, which is all true and made sense to talk about through the history of the war on drugs and how brutal these policies are. But then when you have like very high crime, and I'm not talking about like nonviolent victimless
Yeah,
crime,
right.
like
Yes.
real crime in the cities, it also makes sense for libertarians to point out the other side of that coin,
Yes.
which is that there are very serious violent criminals, and the government who monopolizes the criminal justice system is not very good at dealing with those criminals, you know?
I went
And
down a rabbit hole, like, the last couple of weeks of watching police body cam videos, and I put out a tweet. I said, "This is, like, one of the greatest things other than community notes that have happened," because you see both things. You see men and women who are lives are in danger and who are
right.
tooth and nail trying not to retaliate. And when they pull the
Mhm.
trigger, every single video I've seen has been warranted. It's I don't, I'm not in favor of if someone's charging a cop with a knife, that at a certain point the cop has to be like, oh, well, you've got a knife, I've got a gun, I guess you win. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
You also
Right.
see police body cams of cops being the most loathsome people on earth. Like when they're manhandling a disabled guy who couldn't figure out how to do the checkout ATM, and he's just like protesting, I didn't do anything. And it's just like, if you feel comfortable putting your hands on a mentally disabled person who's struggling with the machine, I have, I can't say what should be done to you, but what you get it. So it's just useful information to see both. And I agree with you that in many of these cases, many such cases, when it's like literally violent crime, I'm not going to be condemning the cops in that instance because
No, in a sense, there might be some violent crimes where I'm condemning the cops for not doing
yeah,
more,
yes,
which is a
like
thing
the
that's
riots.
tough for libertarians to kind of wrap their head around. But
Right.
like the Uvalde shooting,
Yes. Oh, yes.
what are we
Of course.
condemning the cops for there? Are we
Right.
condemning them for like showing up with too much armor? No, we're condemning them for sitting there and not going in and killing this dude.
And preventing
Like
the
that's
parents from doing it.
right, right, exactly. And so then you go like in these environments, sometimes if you want to, first off, if you really understand what our philosophy is, and if you want to like explain it in a compelling way, then maybe you can't just, if you're looking at something like San Francisco, you can't just be talking about how cops shouldn't initiate violence against people who are peaceful, because then it just kind of sounds like you're like, but look, the streets are filled with like people defecating and committing violent crimes and what, and then you could talk about how the cops stop the people there from being armed and protecting their own
Right.
property. Or you could talk about how the cops, how the government has this public property with no restrictions on it, where private property would have restrictions. And so there's just kind of there's like a whole other angle that I think sometimes the softer type of libertarians are kind of weak on. So anyway, so I was making the point, this was a few years ago, and this was very controversial within the Libertarian Party, but I was talking about homeless people hanging out at playgrounds, which was a problem that I experienced firsthand when taking my daughter to visit my mother in New York City. There's like homeless people
Yeah.
literally passed out on the benches in a playground
Yeah.
while little kids are playing around them. And I was saying, kind of,
You
I
sure that wasn't
think I
Miss
was
Lewis or Big J?
well, I can't be sure, but I wasn't gonna get close enough to him to check. But I mean, it is possible. It smelled like Lewis, but I was saying, and kind of like referencing old Rothbard stuff, that I was like, I have absolutely no problem with the cops forcing them to leave, like that they should be physically removed, as our buddy Hoppe would say. And then so Chase, with me and him argued about this a little bit, and I think he said at one point he called me Judge Dredd, and he said, "Oh, you just want to take the law into your own hand, and you don't care what happens about them." And so he said to me, and I'm recalling the Twitter conversation, but this is very close to what it was. And he goes, "Well, Dave, it's not very libertarian of you to support the cops initiating violence against a peaceful person who it was not initiating violence against anyone else." And I was like, okay, well, I don't know. Public property is kind of seized from the taxpayer to begin with, right?
Right.
So this guy didn't look like much of a taxpayer to me. I don't know. Like, why don't we have a right to? If this was private property, we would certainly have a right to remove him. But because our private property was stolen in order to fund this park, now we lose that right. That doesn't really seem very libertarian either. But so we got into this thing where he was saying that's not very libertarian, and I was like, I go, let me ask you something, Chase. Are you like do you are you an anarchist or a minarchist? And he goes like, I'm a minarchist. And I said, okay. So you think that what is the role of police in all of this? And he goes, well, I don't think it's okay to initiate violence against someone unless they've been tried by a jury of their peers and convicted of a crime, and then you can arrest them, try them, and then if they're convicted, then they can be sentenced to some type of punishment. And I was like, okay, so you're saying I'm Judge Dredd and I'm like violating libertarian principles, so let's just get this clear, because like you want to play libertarianism 101, let's play. Okay, so you support a criminal organization funded by stolen money
Right.
at the threat of imprisonment that will then kidnap an innocent person, your words, has not been convicted of a crime yet, enslave that innocent person until they can appear in front of a government court,
A Judge
also
Dredd.
funded
Yep.
also funded by taxpayer money, in front of a literal judge
Mm.
who is funded by taxpayer money. And then when that person, and you're like, oh, just like play me through this whole thing. You think that is somehow less of an egregious
Right.
violation of
Right.
libertarianism than my example, where like given the situation we have right now, a cop with all the other horrible things they do could just go, hey, beat it, there's little kids, they don't want to see you
But
shooting up
here's
heroin and
here's the other thing,
masturbating.
even with the minarchism, there's public bathrooms, right? Are you going to say that men, this is not the trans question. You have bathrooms designated for females, bathrooms designated for males. Someone who is biologically male and identifies as male, they can just go
Yeah.
into the women's bathroom. Of course not, right? So it's perfectly fine to designate a playground for parents and children only. It's not violating anybody's rights.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, I know you weren't getting into the trans thing, but there's this topic, which I find kind of fascinating because there's so many people who identify as libertarian who like are allergic to whatever because there's implications for a lot of things here. Like there's implications about the trans stuff. There's implications about immigration stuff too, that it's like, look, at what point do we say that because like it, can you really logically deduce from the fact that like taxation is theft, and we believe in non-aggression and private property, that therefore once the government takes something from you, it now belongs to everyone
Right. It's
equally,
crazy.
and that there should be no restrictions on this? Like why how exactly did you get to that? Just because it feels good?
Right.
Like would you really say that like, look, like if there's a public school, that some 55-year-old man should be allowed to just come in and shoot up heroin in the middle
Or
of the
even just
school.
have a soda.
And but I'm saying, but like, look, take it to the heroin extreme, because that is not right. It's a non-violent, victimless crime where he's just doing something to his own body and not to yours. But I think we'd all go like, well, no, wait, like, sorry, I may not like that public school exists, but this is worse than it just existing.
Right.
And with your point about the bathrooms, I've used that example before. Just when people will say to me, however you feel about the trans stuff, is that people will go, well, I don't agree. They'll be like, I'm against the government discriminating. And you're like, well, no, you're not against the government discriminating. You're not against discrimination in bathrooms, right? Because if you don't think that the man, forget trans, just the man should be allowed to go into the woman's uh, bathroom, then you're okay with discrimination. Yeah, and I just would like to pinpoint the issue. Your issue is that trans people should be treated as the sex they identify as. Not that we can't discriminate, because you're fine with
Right.
discrimination, right? Like, so yeah.
He just had a good tweet. I did retweet it. Probably made his day. He said the GOP will condemn both socialism and the people who are fleeing socialism. I think
Not a bad
that's a
tweet.
great one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
not a bad
oh,
tweet.
he's
Although to be fair, I don't. Look, the GOP, they suck, and everything they say is almost like They everything good that the GOP says, they don't actually believe in, and
Right.
everything bad that they say, they really believe in and are
Yeah.
gonna make happen. But I will say that I don't for the most part, I don't think that I don't really think it's accurate to say that they're condemning the people fleeing socialism. Like, I haven't really seen too much of that. I think
I
that
think there's a big
I
disdain for illegal immigrants because if you're fleeing some kind of failed regime, you're not always gonna have the opportunity, and maybe it's not America's problem, that's a very fair argument, but you're not gonna have the opportunity to get on that list and do the waiting thing.
Yeah, quite possibly not. I mean, the truth is that a lot of them will just have the opportunity to just enter
Yeah.
and not be on any waiting list or anything like that. And I do think that one of the things, and I say this is somebody who was, I mean, it's been a while now, but years ago was like an open borders guy. That I think we have really reached the point where I think most people looking at it can see that like there is a major problem with the fact that there's just an unrelenting
Right.
flood of immigrants into the country with no type of ability to control or have any for anyone in the domestic population to have any type of say on who comes in and who doesn't come in.
And no
And to
mechanism to
me,
integrate them. So even if you're gonna do the open
right,
borders thing that we should welcome
right.
them in, well, they're not being welcomed in either, so that's not working in that capacity.
Yeah, and it's not even as if you have, say, like, let's just say, broadly speaking, we were to say that, like, the right half of America was like, we don't want you here. And then the left half of America was like, we want you here and we want you to be American and we want you to integrate
Right,
into our
right.
society. It's more like the right half of America is like, we don't want you here. And the left half of America is like, welcome to a white supremacist nightmare. This country is evil and it is against you. And it just, look, the idea of let's say like our vision of like a more just society being like kind of like a private property based society or a stateless society, the idea of an uninvited group of people having an unwavering flow of them coming in with the people on this
Right.
property having no say whether or not they can come in does not at all reflect what we're talking about. Like that's
Yeah.
not that has nothing in common with any type of free society. And I think that there's a reason why all of the very worst of the bad guys are very on board with this.
Hey, folks, I want to talk to you a bit about Entera Skincare. Now, their founder is a biochemical engineer. He's a former pharmaceutical industry maven. He likes MMA, and his skin was often getting abraded after sparring on the mats. So, searching high and low, testing over the counter, testing prescription, he found that most things out there aren't nearly as effective as they claimed. So, what did he do? He went to work, and a few years later, Entera Skincare was born. Now, their mission is to revolutionize the skincare and hair regrowth industry by offering cutting edge, scientifically advanced products that deliver real, tangible results. And I want to take a second to spotlight a few of their products, specifically their Folliton Hair Regrowth Serum. Say goodbye to hair loss woes. It's made from a proprietary blend of active peptides. And the great thing is, you're not going to have those side effects like some other hair products have. Folliton works wonders in reversing hair loss and improving the overall health of your scalp. They've got their Platinum Silk Hair and Body Oil to shield your cells from free radicals and signs of aging. They've got their Restore Serum, which also helps with defeating wrinkles, crow's feet, and dark circles. Lord knows we could all use some of that, especially me and Dave Smith. So do not miss out on this incredible opportunity to transform your skincare routine. Use promo code WELCOME for 10% off at checkout. All you have to do is go to enteraskincare.com, Entera skincare.com. Use code WELCOME, 10% off. Get ready to shine. Folks, there's some people out there with very bad habits that affect your health and the smell of your clothing in your home. You know what I'm talking about. And Fume is here to help you break it. FUM. What is Fume? It's an innovative, award nominated device that instead of electronics is complete natural. Instead of vapor, uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, they use all natural, delicious flavors. It will help you break that bad habit because you know that hand ritual people like to do at a party after dinner. You know what I'm referring to. Stopping is something a lot of people put off because it's hard, but it's extremely important. And switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 100,000 customers and has thousands of success stories. And there's no reason that can't be you in getting rid of that very, very bad habit. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com, use code Malice, save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use code Malice to save an additional 10% off your order. I implore you, for those of you who know what I'm referring to and are looking for a way to get your health back on track, give Fume a try because it's helped a lot of people see a brighter tomorrow. And I love this product. Let's get back to the show. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about something else I saw on Twitter. You've actually influenced me unintentionally a lot in this capacity.
I've
Seeing
moved
how
you away from a lot of my beliefs.
well, no, this is just something I like watching. I'll tell you exactly what it is. Seeing how here's the thing, like when I or you criticize fans, it's always a very, very small minority. Even Skanks fans who like some of them have a screw loose. I was at Skankfest. They were great. Like
Yeah.
literally I'd say 99% great. Whenever I go to events, like people are scared to talk to me with good reason. I love meeting people because they have really smart, thought out questions that make me think. They are very friendly and nice. They're almost, I think, every time high achieving or certainly ambitious, take themselves seriously, not in the sense of having an ego like myself, but in the sense of like, life is a great opportunity. I'm going to grab it by the horns kind of thing. It's the few that kind of screw things up. And what I meant is, I keep my personal life extremely private because I've seen how people go after your wife, like your kids and things like this, and you're not alone in this at all. This happens to anyone once you reach a certain level. To me, it's very disturbing. And like even before you were dad, like I saw them were going after Lauren. You know what I mean? So this is why whenever I'm in a relationship, no one will ever know about it, and I never ever discuss it. Um, I'm curious with you though. Someone, in the words of our former president, a very high IQ individual. I saw the response where they were going after your kids and you went back and forth. Can you talk about that and explain a bit how that made you feel? Because I just vicariously was absolutely enraged, and I didn't even know the
Well,
situation.
yeah, it was well, this chick has like a few screws loose for sure. And I, one of the things, by the way, a little bit of backstory, because I don't know much about this chick at all, but I do know that she was like could not have been more complimentary of me in the past. Like she was like tweeting like after Rogan appearances like a few years ago where she was like, Dave has to be the presidential candidate. He is the best libertarian spokesman ever, was like all this. And I think it's one of these weird things where people have egos, but like something I like didn't give enough attention
Right.
to her, or I said the wrong thing and then it was like a complete flip,
Yeah.
which I've had this happen before too, where people go from being like your biggest fan to like one slight and now they're your biggest enemy. And so she went off on this whole tangent about all of the things that I've done wrong and how I'm a hypocrite. And
Wait, hold
one
on,
of
hold on.
them
Twitter only has 280 characters. I mean, my God, was she writing the Galt speech? All the things you've done wrong. Good lord, she must still be
Well,
writing.
see, as an old blue check
Oh,
mark,
that's true.
who doesn't have a new blue check mark, Twitter does not have a 280 character anymore. So you can actually, yes, you can capture all of the things I've done wrong, which is a novel
Yeah,
worth of things. Um, but it's not quite an Ayn Rand novel, but it's like
it's
a
great.
nice, it's yeah, okay. But so then one of the things she says in there was she goes, she which is so bizarre, is she goes, Dave claims to believe in bodily autonomy, yet he circumcised his son.
Oof.
And which is, first of all, and I won't even get into this anymore because I don't like I'm not gonna actually comment on my children's
No,
genitalia,
yeah,
but
thank you.
let's just say she has no idea what she's talking about. But how the fuck would you know? I've never talked about that publicly. Like, you have no idea what's going on. And it was just like such a bizarre thing. And you're like, yo, are you talking about my 2-year-old's penis?
Oh my God.
Like, what's wrong with you? What type of psychopath? Like, what sick fuck talks about this shit? And she did get like, she got she
And wait,
got
wait, also,
dragged
just
for it.
it's even worse because this means she's had this laundry list in her head. So it's been as part of this Dave file, and now she's just
Yes.
dropping all the receipts. It's like, how long has this been something in the back of your head?
Yeah, it is very disturbing. I will say there's definitely like like I talk about having a wife and kids and stuff, and it's such a like meaningful thing to me that it would be hard for me to like never
Sure.
mention it. But I do definitely try my best to keep them like completely out of any type of spotlight. I don't post pictures of my kids. I don't like I don't people don't really know what's going on with my family, but it is and I guess I'm lucky in a sense that I haven't dealt with it too bad. I know other people have dealt with it a lot worse than me, but yeah, it certainly is like there's lots of people who I've gone at and had like kind of Twitter wars with and shit, but I would never imagine ever like bringing up their small children or their wives or something like that.
Oh,
there's like
only their mom. Their mom's
Oh,
on
moms are fair game.
mom's on the
Moms
table.
are fair game. Your mom, you come at me, your mom's getting it. All right. Yeah, but yeah. So it was a little bit, you know, that yes, that bothered me a little bit, and I thought, I had to kind of let her have it a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, so is it at the point where you're still taken aback when you see things like this, or is it like this is just part of the territory? Because I still get taken aback when people start arguing sometimes about my personal relationships or my family. It is just like someone like you don't. I understand why you think you're more informed on this issue than I am, but you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, what was so strange about this one, yeah, I was a little bit taken aback on this one. That one to me crossed the line, even the line of like the wild, wild west that is
Yeah,
Twitter, you
yeah,
know. So like I was a little bit like, yo, that's funky. But it is crazy when people will have this thing that it's like you don't know what you're talking about.
right.
You know you don't know what you're talking about. I know you don't know what you're talking about. I know you don't know what you're talking about, right? Like we're all in this like it's just but yet you're still going to publicly say this and about a subject that is so wildly inappropriate to be
Yeah,
talking about that if you like you don't hear yourself right now and go, "Yo, like what? What am I doing?" And but again, I think there are it's like I mean, I'm sure me and you are weird people in our
sure,
own way, and
100%.
this world brings weird people into it, and so this chick is a weird chick. So whatever. I try and this might be a little bit on me because I violated one of my own rules. Which I've given this advice to some of the younger libertarians who are like my guys who I bring up where it's don't interact with crazy chicks. And I did interact with her a couple
Yeah.
times, and that's me violating my own rule, which I should never do. There's there's crazy chicks, and you can always tell. You always know who they are. They show you in their eyes,
Yeah.
and they'll always give you red flags right away. Just do not interact with them.
Uh,
That's it.
let's talk about the events of today, which is
Sure.
what would have been in any other universe the biggest news of a month is now secondary, which is the
Uh huh.
judge had put a gag order on President Trump and telling him, "You better shut the f up." And if he violates it, he's looking at 30 days in jail. Now, my understanding is, and everyone, please double check me because I am not saying this with any degree of certainty. My understanding had been that the Secret Service had said you're not taking this guy to jail. We cannot uh, keep him safe in that situation. Um, if this was a Democratic Congress, I am confident that they would strip him of Secret Service protection. We do not have a Democratic Congress, so they do not have the capacity to do that. I don't know if the president, by executive order, can do that. I highly doubt that they would play that level of brinksmanship yet. But the question I have for you, and I've been thinking about this all day, is do you think he's going to listen to her? And it's a judge. She can just pretend, "Oh, this was passive aggressively referring to me or my staff." She could put out the warrant. Like, where do you think this goes?
I I don't know, and I'm very interested to see. I am not at all confident that Donald Trump is capable
Right.
of not saying things. Like that's part of his his, you know, charm and abrasiveness or whatever. Like that's the double-edged sword that is Donald Trump. Whatever the part of your brain is that's like, maybe you shouldn't say that. He doesn't have that. I also think that's part of the reason why all of these people hate him so much
Yes.
and why they're so terrified of him being president. I don't think it's so much what he might do. I think it's always been what he might say.
Yeah.
That so that I don't know. I can't imagine Donald Trump having to be guarded verbally. It's something I just can't
But
picture.
there was one time, which was Kavanaugh. I don't know what happened there, but they got him to shut the hell up and let it play out because if he spoke out, he would add
Yeah.
fuel to the fire and it got to him. So there is one at least incident of him knowing to keep quiet. On the other hand, from his perspective, if this is a completely bogus political persecution and it's going to obviously impact his campaign, regardless of the veracity of the charges, he's got the biggest pulpit in the world. You would expect him to be like, hey, this is complete bogus and to speak on that. So
Well,
it's completely arbitrary what a judge will do. If you say the judge is
sure.
corrupt or has it out for me, is that a threat? I mean, you could, as the judge, you could easily make that claim, like, oh, he's saying, blah blah blah, insurrection. So this is really uncharted territory.
Well, that's exactly right. And it really is. It's uncharted territory for the United States of America. It's not uncharted territory in human history. I mean, these
Sure, sure,
things
yeah,
happen all the time in third world countries. Like it is very banana republic type shit. And I don't say that as someone like it's not as if I'm not saying like the US government has never done anything this evil. We've done far more evil things. We do lots of evil things and that are American, Lying the country into a war is a very American thing to do. We've been doing it for well over 100 years, right? And like tons of things that you could think of that are truly heinous, locking people up for nonviolent crimes and all types of like rigging the economy against working people in favor of elites but this is not a thing that America does. This has never been a thing that America does. It's never been like, oh, we're weaponizing the legal system against a political enemy of the regime. Now, you can argue about things with John F. Kennedy or with Richard Nixon, where quite possibly the system was weaponized against them, but in very different ways. And this has always been, at least for since the indictments started rolling out, this is certainly something I've been talking about on my show a lot, that this seemed to me to be the play, which would ultimately be like what judges would insist while he's under trial, what type of like plea agreements he would ultimately be
yeah,
cornered into making. And it is really like a lot of people I think just don't know about this stuff, but how much, back to the point I was making with Chase, like how much the 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 legal system, which claims that you're innocent until proven guilty, will then just like that judges can just give you gag orders
yeah,
and just say, hey, you're not allowed to talk about this. Like what? Like what type of like heinous violation of liberty is that you're an innocent person
right.
according to the law. You have not been convicted of anything. Your presumption is innocent,
Or even
but
tried.
all of
Yep.
a sudden, yeah, you don't have First Amendment rights anymore. You can't speak about things I say you can't speak about. And if you speak about them, you get thrown in jail. And there's cases like this with say like Roger Stone, for example. He had a gag order, just couldn't talk about his case. Meanwhile, it's being litigated every day in the
Yeah, yeah,
media, and you can't defend yourself. You're not allowed to defend yourself. And now with Trump, there is this extra layer in it where it's like it's not just a violation of liberty, but it's very blatant election interference.
yeah.
Because the biggest story of this election is Donald Trump's indictments. And now Joe Biden or Chris Christie or any of his Republican opponents, they're free to say whatever they want about the indictments. And yet Donald Trump is not allowed to talk about the the biggest political story. And so it does again, look, it seems pretty obvious to me, and I think most people who are being honest with themselves, that it is not the case that Donald Trump, committed all of these crimes and it just happens to be they are all the indictments are coming down during the 2024 election. Like this is the plan. The kind of scary thing about it and kind of fascinating thing is that, like you said, you were like, I don't think they're ready to take it there, at least not yet. and you're like, every one of these things keeps failing. So, what's it going to take, and how far are they actually willing to go with this? And I think that's kind of what a lot of us are wondering. We might get to find out.
Folks, here's where we are. Barron's is warning the stock market looks like the dot-com boom before the bust. The Magnificent Seven, which are all tech stocks, they account for more than 25% of 2023's gains. Fortune is warning the S&P is heading below 3,000. Two of the biggest stock market crashes happened in October, which was 1929, and Black Monday, 1987. Seasonally, we are entering the best 6-month period for gold and silver. And along with the Fed nearing the end of their rate hikes, gold is poised to skyrocket. JP Morgan and Wells Fargo are both forecasting gold to hit all-time highs in 12 to 18 months. So here's what I want you to do. Call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention my name, Michael Malice, and you'll always get best-in-class service from Patriots protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold Group has the no-fee-for-life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no-fee-for-life IRA and qualifying rollovers. All you have to do is call 888-505-9845 to get a free investor guide, or even better, just go to malicegold.com. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 7 years in a row. So call 888-505-9845 or go to malicegold.com and start protecting your money from the state. Your Welcome is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Now, most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, while you're listening to me and whoever this is this week, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, or maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you could be doing right now, which is getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy. You can save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. Let's get back to it. Did you watch the debate last week?
Yes.
So I want to ask you, as a professional comedian, what was your opinion of Christie's delivery?
Oh
And
my
let me, for people
god.
who didn't watch the debate, for the very first time, I was trending on Twitter because Christie looked at the camera, as much of him as could fit in it, and he said, "Hey, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself. If you keep avoiding these debates because you're scared, we're not going to call you Donald Trump. We're going to call you Donald Duck." And he made this fucking face, and I
Oh
just
my.
immediately tweeted, Porky Pig attacks Donald Duck, and Porky Pig was trending that night, and I'm like, "This is what gets me trending."
Now that's pretty good. Dude, the craziest thing to me about it, dude, I was watching it. I watched it in bed with my wife, and we both, when he said that line, I swear to God, we didn't like plan this or anything, but we both just went, "Ugh!" Like we made the same, like it was like this visceral reaction of just like, oh, dude, no, no." Like, can you imagine? Because that obviously was clearly such a scripted
Yes.
line, right? Like, you didn't come up with that at the time. But you're telling me there was a room full of people, and Christie went, "All right, how about I do this? So I'm gonna go, hey Donald Trump, I know you're watching, and I'm not gonna call you Donald Trump. I'm gonna call you Donald Duck." And a room full of people went, "Yeah, yeah, you know what? Go for it, dude. You got it right there." Oof. I smell a game changer. That's what I smell right there. That was, oh my God. It was the worst presidential debate I've ever seen. And it wasn't even the whole thing was just an unbelievable. And I mean, I've seen some bad ones, but this was something of a different kind. Like it was there's also something I don't know if you thought this, but partly like just where we are now, where you have Trump going like doing this kind of power move which is very interesting in a way because we all kind of know Trump would go dominate every one of these debates. I don't really think we think Trump would be
Not
there. He'd be
necessarily.
making fun of
I don't
everyone.
think
He'd be
that's
the
true because he did
no?
not do well against Biden, not as well as he
Yeah,
should
but
have.
it's a little different though.
It is.
Trump is the most suited for the debate where there's like
Yes.
8
Yes.
different people there, and he's the one in the middle,
Yes.
and he's just like flaming everybody.
Yes.
Those there was never one of those that he didn't shine in.
Right. Correct. That's fair.
And you're right, he did do bad in the Biden debate, or at least worse than he should have done.
Correct. Yeah. That's what I
But
meant. Yeah.
he's going and going, "Hey, I'm gonna go sit down with Tucker while you guys do this and have a long form conversation." And you have Vivek Ramaswamy has been hitting up all the podcasts.
Yep.
RFK Jr. on the Democrat side has been hitting up all the podcasts. And then you have this format that is just in today's landscape, it's so obviously inferior in every way. You're like what is this?
Yeah.
Could you just imagine what? Imagine like you're gonna debate anarchy versus like statism or something like that. But instead of that, here's my plan, Michael. What do you want to go do a debate on anarchism? But instead of you like sitting down for an hour and discussing it with one other person, I'm gonna have 8 people. One will be for democratic socialism, one will be for constitutional republicanism, one will be for communism, you'll be for anarchy, they'll be for this, they'll be for that, and you'll each get like 30 seconds at a time. You'll talk over each other a whole bunch,
Yeah.
you'll blah, blah, and you would just be like, what? This is the most ridiculous way to have a conversation. What are we determining from this conversation? You're like, oh, who's the most powerful human being in the world? That's what's on the line.
So I
That's
am.
the way we do this.
I'm ready to make an endorsement in the presidential Republican presidential race.
All right.
As you know, as many of the viewers know, my favorite comedian is Neil Hamburger, and Neil Hamburger is a character. He comes out, glasses, sweaty comb over, tuxedo, coughing into the mic. He's got all these glasses that he's dropping. First time I saw him, he was on Jimmy Kimmel. This is way over 10 years ago. And, his jokes are all anti-humor. So it's like, "Hey, where did my whore ex-wife run off to, with her dentist? I don't know, but when I see her in court next month, Alaska." And then it just cut to some guy in the audience with his arms crossed, and he goes, "Come on, guys, I have cancer." So I saw him once in LA, and if you don't know that, it's a whole bit. Like, the girl in front of me turned to her boyfriend, goes, "What is this?" So, in that vein, I am absolutely endorsing Mike Pence to be the nominee because his you think Chris Christie's delivery was bad. His humor is so excruciatingly painful. It's like the British version of The Office. And you guys may know the American version of The Office with Michael Scott, and it's kind of haha. You watch the British version, you're literally ready to pull off your own skin to make it stop because you're so embarrassed for all the characters and they're actors and the actors are in on it and they're having a great time. But when you watch it, there's no laughter. You're just extremely uncomfortable the whole time. When he had that joke about like, well, full confession, I've been sleeping with the teacher, my wife. I'm just like, I want 4 years of this. So everyone just is driving spikes into their own ears just so they don't have to hear anything anymore. So Mike Pence has my endorsement for the nomination.
Yeah, that was brutal.
It's so
It
bad.
was it was so bad, dude, so bad. And then there was also just on top of the cringy jokes, there was a crazy did you see that like the Vivek segments where they all just talked over him
Yeah,
the
it
whole
was
time
so
he was
weird.
speaking? Like I mean, even in presidential debates, I've seen people talk over each other, but never just like
Right.
that. Where they just like they're like, we will not let you get this sentence off, and then the moderators just went like, okay, you've had your time,
Yeah,
and
it
like
was
moved on
so
to the
weird.
next person, and you're like, whoa, it was really nuts. And it's such a strange. Again, it's just one of these things. Like I've never seen anything like this before. I've never seen anything where like Donald Trump was up by 50 something points in one of the most recent polls. He's not like the front runner. He's not. This isn't like 2016. It's like he is just light years above everybody else in terms of support from the Republican base. Most of the base believes he is the rightful sitting president of the United States of America still right now. They're not interested in any of this. And then we're just going to have this big show that this guy refuses to come to. And it was that like the argument against Trump has always been kind of like, okay, well, we're the adults
Yes,
in the
yeah, yeah,
room,
right.
and then to see like this is you guys being the adults in the room. All
It
right.
let's switch gears a little bit and talk about we're recording this on, Tuesday night. Today's for the first time ever, I believe, a speaker has been vacated by the House. Based Matt Gaetz, forced the vote. got Kevin McCarthy out of there. I think it's very clear that there is no real governing majority in the House of Representatives, which is just a cluster, which is what I would prefer over pretty much anything. Kevin McCarthy, as of this writing, he had updated his Twitter bio. It used to say Speaker of the House and congressman from California, I believe 20th district. Now it just says 55th Speaker of the House. So he removed the fact that he was a congressman. He said he's not going to accept the run for speaker again. It's not
Yeah.
impossible he's going to leave Congress, just like John Boehner did and Paul Ryan. I wouldn't blame him. This is humiliating. I don't see a path. What's he going to do? Wait 2 years? They get a bigger majority, then he's going to come back in. This is what he wanted. Gollum. He got the ring, and then he couldn't hack it. Whether it's his fault or not is irrelevant. Point being, they cannot do anything, literally, until there is a speaker sworn in. They just got to sit there and vote, and so on and so forth. They just passed like 45 days, whatever, omnibus, whatever the spending bill was. I don't think this is going to go 45 days, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts. Oh, my favorite tweet of today of mine, I said that uh, Kevin McCarthy's going to go home, pour himself a nice glass of scotch, and think about Matt Gaetz fucking his wife. So, what are your thoughts about the events of today?
Um, well, it's interesting. I mean, there seems like there are always kind of like these factions within the Democrats and the Republicans, where there will be the factions that are kind of on the on the fringes.
Right.
So within the Democratic Party, you have, whatever, Bernie Sanders
AOC,
and
maybe, yeah, a
Yeah,
squad, yeah,
Ilhan Omar, people like that, right? Who talk, their rhetoric is certainly like to the left of your average Democrat, and they want whatever the thing coming up is. If there's a healthcare bill, they want a little bit more in the
right.
healthcare bill than the Democratic establishment is willing to give, and typically speaking, they kind of end up falling in line.
Yeah, Pelosi's a
And
beast.
this is on the Democratic side and on the Republican side.
Yeah,
They push for a little bit more, but ultimately they fall in line because they think their party's better than the other party. The sliver of Republicans who are outside of the Republican establishment right now, they seem to mean it.
yeah, seem to,
And
yes,
yes, and that's not to say that they're perfect. I mean, they're, from my perspective, preferable on many issues, but there's certainly a lot of issues I think they're not good on. But what happened with McCarthy was that Gates led the resistance to him becoming speaker in the first place, and he only got their support because he agreed to like a list of their demands, and he basically hasn't come through on any of them. And Matt Gaetz was like, "Oh no, I mean it. Like we had this agreement on this condition, and you haven't come through on any of them." And it's interesting to see, as like opposed to say Bernie Sanders, who would talk about how much he was going to bring a war powers resolution about the war in Yemen and then back down at the last minute, and like all of these things. So I at least like that. And I agree with you that I'd rather Congress be as divided and as stagnant and as unable to do anything as possible. And I also because I look at politics as the state of politics in the West right now is that it can be used for spreading messages, which is good. And if it's going to do that, then I want it to spread the best message possible. And aside from that, I like landing black eyes on the bad
yeah,
guys. I like the bad guys taking punishment and public humiliation.
yes,
And so yes, I love Brexit, and I love Trump winning in 2016 over Hillary Clinton. And I love things that, whatever it is, where the kind of progressive establishment takes a real black eye. And I see this as, even though it's Kevin McCarthy, I still see him as like one and the same. So I like that. I like the idea that Matt Gaetz and his little sliver of Republicans have the power to nationally humiliate the worst of the Republican establishment.
Two sisters, one a respected TV producer, Jill Blackstone, and the other, Wendy. She was disabled, nearly blind and deaf, and Jill had devoted herself to taking care of Wendy.
Jill was her best friend, her sister, her everything.
But the sister bond was shattered when Wendy and some of the sisters' rescue dogs were found dead in a garage next to a toppled-over barbecue grill. Jill says accidental carbon monoxide poisoning killed everyone. Police do not believe her.
Police arrested Jill Blackstone for the murder of her sister.
Investigators think it was staged to look like an accident.
Who will you believe, especially now that a secret source has come forward with evidence never made public before?
Jill was a good producer. There's no doubt about that. But would she produce murder is the question.
Season 2 of Bad Bad Thing, The Blackstone Sisters, available now wherever you get your podcasts.
I always say, show me a perfect family. I'll show you a family with secrets.
Let's get back to the show. It's very clear that there's a lot of contempt by Republican and Democrat, but let's talk about Republican elites for what they call the crazies and the base. And they're not always wrong because, you interact with these people. A lot of them do have a screw loose and so on and so forth.
Sure.
But one of the questions I always had, and I'm sure you do as well, is how much of this is performative and how much of this is, true, right? And like, it's easy for me, if I'm a congressman to be like, oh, I'm not treated with enough respect and make everyone kiss my ass and send me money. It's like, oh, mea culpa, play the victim. Everyone I know in Washington, and I know lots of people who work there, has said to me that privately, it really has gotten a lot more toxic. That this isn't just, in front of the cameras. Yes, they may get along behind the scenes, like Kamala Harris fist bumping Lindsey Graham on the Senate floor. But in terms of just the atmosphere, it really is getting to them. It really is toxic. People from both sides, I hate that term, do want blood from their opponents. And I do think that this constant, unprecedented online negativity, which they were very kind of removed from in years past before social media, was key to, among other things, your boy Mitt Romney deciding he's not going to run again. Because if someone is to the point where they have a fake Twitter account, stock account to read Twitter, they're seeing this. And if you're someone who's been a very respected businessman, respected governor, you ran the Olympics, presidential candidate, okay, you take your punches in the presidential race. It comes with the territory. But now, like, literally everything you say, people are coming at you with language you've never heard in your life as a Mormon. At a certain point, you're like, I'm super rich, got a great looking wife, great family. I love them. What am I doing here? My party doesn't need me. Utah's going to elect a Republican anyway. What's the point? So long story short, keep it up, guys, because it's working.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I know it from my life. I go, so in my actual life, basically I'm with my wife and kids and I hang out with my friends and then I do podcasts like this with my friends. And then I go to stand-up comedy shows where it's just not, crowds always love what I'm doing. People come up to me afterward. Like, I'm a big fan of yours, kind of nothing but positivity.
Right.
But then there's a whole bunch of people on Twitter who hate my guts.
Yes.
Like, if it wasn't for Twitter or like social media, there'd be no interacting with all these people who are like,
You're not coming to your comedy show to tell you suck.
Right. Yeah. They're not coming to buying a ticket. They're not in my life anywhere. Right. Now, I'm like a kid from Brooklyn who kind of, comes from like a middle-class background and is like a foul-mouthed comedian. So it's like, it doesn't really like, I have a thick skin when it comes to that shit. But if you try to imagine what it must be like for some of these people who are like born with a silver spoon in their mouth, are like totally insulated in this world where there's this grand narrative created about them and how important they are and all of this, to now be exposed to this must be somewhat shattering for them. Look, you can see it a lot with people in the corporate press as well.
Oh, yeah.
Where they are really thrown.
I just got a girl to delete her whole Twitter.
Whoa.
She deleted all her tweets. Molly Knight. She was
wow.
She had slandered or been accused of slandering. I want to be careful in a lawsuit. Some baseball player. She said that he fractured some girl's skull, even though it was known that was not the case. He sued her. She deleted her tweets, so on and so forth. And I just started going after her last week, not knowing any of this. She was just a complete harridan, and just going after Elon and saying journalists are honest. And I was hitting her, and then She's been on Twitter, I think, since 2010. She deleted them all. There's like 100 left. She deleted thousands. All that you worked down the drain. So I'll pat myself on the back for that, Scal.
Well, yeah, 100%. What was it? It was that Taylor Lorenz awful woman who like was going off about the harassment that she's been dealing with, and someone actually showed up to her house, and then she showed up to the Libs of TikTok person's house, like
And her
they
friend's
have this
house.
thing where
Lives of TikTok's
yes,
friend's house. Yeah.
they
Hyatt
have
talked
this
about it in
thing
the
where
show.
they do feel like this is only supposed to go one way,
Right.
and like you're not supposed to be able to throw this back at us. Like it's wild to see them like if you just think about how much they like demonized the unvaccinated
When they
during
do it,
COVID.
it's free
But
speech. And when you do
yeah,
it, it's harassment and an attack on the First Amendment.
right. And so it is like there's in so many ways, and I think that it's easy. This is a natural tendency that we're all guilty of to some degree, but I think it's the thing that probably with like leftist socialist types is the thing that we see that's the most infuriating about them. But it's very easy in general to take everything that you're handed and everything that's good for granted and then complain about what you don't have.
Sure.
It's just kind of a natural human tendency. And I think that a lot of us, if we're like people complain about like tech censorship, which I do too. It's a big problem.
Sure.
And things like that. But it's really like to just appreciate what we have now, like the weapon we have now that we never had before, that people can actually get to these people, that me and you can have these conversations and so many people can be listening to them and kind of like put the dots together also. And then like you were saying before, we can also benefit from the people listening to us because we see them on social media and sometimes they'll put some dots together
Sure.
that we didn't put together and be like, oh yeah, sure, that's a really good way to look at
Yeah.
it too. Like, and there is one of the positive things. It's also one of the scary things because you get your enemy frazzled and sometimes they can become more dangerous.
Sure.
But these guys really do seem frazzled in a way that I've never seen before.
You know what it was? Because for decades, literally decades, how it worked was the Democrats fight the Republicans, right? And oh my God, you can't vote in those Democrats. They're going to ruin the budget. Oh my God, you can't vote in those Republicans. They're going to put starving people in the street or bring back lynching, whatever the argument was. And the whole time, the corporate press is lobbing bombs. And Nixon, who was made fun of in 1962 when he lost the governorship race in California after almost becoming president 2 years prior, said, he goes, just think what you'd be missing. You won't have Nixon to kick around anymore. What preceded that, the sentence right before it, he goes, all I'm asking is that if you ask questions of one candidate, you ask it of the other candidate. Like that was his whole like, and even that was like too much for them. So now instead of like people lobbing bombs at Pelosi or Biden, who are completely symptoms of the problem, and they're going not just for the New York Times as an entity, but these apparatchiks who, oh my God, I've got the New York Times on my resume, I'm untouchable. They don't know what to do. And the J School certainly did not prepare them for it. And they are not quick on their feet.
That's right. And look, so many of these things kind of like a lot of things happened at the same time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened at the same time was like during like this explosion of social media and explosion of resentment from the people. Because, like I really do think that like, even if we had social media in the 80s or even the 90s, I just don't think it would have been like this. I mean, the country changed for a lot of different reasons, but like I always use the WWF as the example, but like in the 1980s, all Vince McMahon had to do was throw an American flag on a guy and the whole crowd was like, that's the good guy. That's our team.
Right.
There was just a different spirit in this country that's removed now. The 1980s were only 30 years after the 1950s. Okay. It was like not that far removed from a very different America. That's not the case today. And particularly, so in 2016, we're only a few years out from the worst economic recession in almost 100 years and two disastrous catastrophe failed wars and a lot of things, the Bush administration, the Obama administration. But when Trump came in 2016 and ran, there was something that he partially ignited it. He was partially a result of it. but he did kind of, there was this paradigm shift where, if you remember Mitt Romney in 2012, the big, or one of the big scandals was when he said the binders full of women comment. And what Romney was actually doing, if you remember, was he was on his hands and knees begging. They accused him of being sexist, and he went, no, we wanted to hire women. I asked for binders full of women. And their response to that was, binders full of women? You sexist. And so he was kind of like down on his hands and knees being, please, please don't paint me as a sexist. I'm not at all. And they were like, that's the way you're begging is sexist. And then Trump comes in there and they're like, you've called women fat pigs? And he's like, only Rosie O'Donnell. And then Megyn Kelly goes, there were others too. And he goes, probably. It's just like, like, it was almost like there was this whole thing where it's like we're not doing that anymore.
Yes.
There was a whole like kind of movement where it's like, you know what? The apologizing just gets you called the name anyway. So let's just be hilarious with it and throw and something. And I think this is a big part of why they loathe Donald Trump so much. It's not just policy stuff or anything. It's like that is this physical embodiment of a repudiation of all of them and all of their feelings and all of this. But yeah, it's a different world now, and I certainly think the levels of contempt for the establishment and the levels of contempt that the establishment has for the American people are very clearly higher than I've ever seen.
And all the polling I've seen points to that as well, that the level of trust in American establishments is at historic lows. All the indicators are in that direction. I think all of social media is fueling that, which I'm delighted about. There's a lot of hand-wringing about how you turn this car around. Well, here's how you turn around. Don't be such insufferable literal demons who have no redeeming qualities whatsoever. And since you can't,
look,
this is going to get worse for you.
Well, look, it's an encouraging thing. It's also a dangerous thing. I think we've used this analogy before where it's like a woman who's being abused in a relationship is like, that's it, I'm leaving. And you're like, that's good. This is also the time when you're in the most danger.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if the guy was going to kill you, like now's the time he's going to kill you.
Or she's going to kill him. Or she's going to,
right. Yeah, but so I think there's some things to be concerned about, but one way or the other, the answer is that this woman is supposed to leave this guy.
Right.
Like the answer is that we're not supposed to trust these people.
Yes.
And why should we? Right. Like the answer isn't that we're just supposed to trust institutions. The answer is that if institutions want that trust, they should be trustworthy.
Yeah.
Which they're not.
Not even a little. Dave, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this episode?
Oh, man, we had so many good parts. You know what my favorite part of this episode was? Someone just recently tweeted at me that they were like, he goes, can you guys bring the crossover episodes that you guys had back during the pandemics? Like, can you bring that back? Because that kept me going through the whole pandemic. And I just was thinking about that as we were recording today. And I was remembering those conversations we had during the whole lockdowns and stuff where we were doing shows like every week, and how I heard so many positive things about, like how that like kind of held people together, and that I remember saying it also kind of did that for me too. Like it was really helpful for me, and I just kind of had that feeling the whole time we were talking today. So that was my favorite part.
Well, they are welcome.